Warm welcome. I'm looking after the Steve Scruton Show. Yes, he's back tomorrow, and he'll be down at that show at Barleylands. I'll give you a few more events actually around the county a bit later on. But it's a warm welcome to Edwin Shirley now. Now, Edwin Shirley was the guy who founded in '74 EST. Now, you might see EST trucks rolling about the countryside now. And he formed this original company, Edwin Shirley Trucking. Now, what, 74, that was a long time. A warm welcome, Edwin, to
Hello.
Now, you think to yourself, how did you get into that? But let's go farther back. So, where were you brought up? In Kent, wasn't it?
Yes. My parents had a dairy farm in Kent. So I used to milk cows and sell milk and cream, Jersey cream. And
I'm waiting for the link, but there isn't one yet.
There isn't really a link with that. University.
Where did you go to school then?
In Cranbrook in Kent. And I was always interested in the theatre. And then at university, I joined the National Youth Theatre from school.
From Cambridge?
At Cambridge, I did lots of theatre things. And after that, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I had a friend from the National Youth Theatre working on the technical side of theatre, lighting.
So, with the National Youth Theatre, was that based in London?
Yes.
And
yes.
so, what were you doing productions?
No, I was an actor. I was an actor.
Edwin Shirley, the actor.
my famous first role was as a messenger in a production of Antony and Cleopatra with Helen Mirren as Cleopatra.
Just takes you back.
Yes,
it?
A long time ago.
I was going to say,
she was 18.
Is she more famous than you are?
I think so.
You think so? So really, would you have said in those days that you wanted to be an actor? Do you think?
I tried, yeah, but I without much immediate success, I drifted into doing technical work because there was always technical work in the theatre.
So technical work brought you into doing what sort of thing?
Lighting.
That was fascinating to you?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And lighting in theatre then led to, through people doing theatre lighting, when rock bands first started to take lighting on tour.
What year are we in here?
Early 70s.
Early
70s.
Yeah.
They wanted to take some lighting. And bands like David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, I did lighting tours with them. I did tours with Ike and Tina Turner when they were together.
Yeah.
Melanie, lots of people like that.
So take me through that, because people like, you've just mentioned several groups there, they would have their own van with their own kit, would they? In those days? How did they get around?
They'd come from America, they'd hire a van and get someone to drive it. And if you were on the lighting crew, you were a candidate for driving the van. And what happened basically was that you did a show every night. So you got there at 8 o'clock in the morning at the venue, you spent all day setting up, you did the show, you broke it down, and then you drove all night. And after a few nights of that, it got silly, dangerous, everyone was tired, and there were accidents and there were all kinds of stupid things happening.
So in that era, groups were if you think back, groups were actually going from provincial town to provincial town to provincial town, weren't they?
Yeah.
Possibly a bit more like they're doing today, actually.
Yeah.
We've come back in a sort of circle.
Yeah.
Because touring's back, isn't it?
Yeah, very much.
But anyway, we won't go on today. So we're talking about provincial town type touring. So I can imagine that must have been hard because you were driving long distances as well, weren't you?
Yeah, and stupid itineraries. You'd do Edinburgh, Cornwall, and back to Norwich. There was no geographical sense in it at all.
Who were you working with in those days? I mean, is it someone that...
there was a lighting company called ESP, and people often ask me what it stood for, so I just said Edwin Shirley Productions. It didn't. It was in the old days of hippies. It stood for Extrasensory Projections.
Oh, right.
But it was easier to say Edwin Shirley Productions.
So who did you get to meet in those days? Was it anybody that you later worked with?
Oh, yes. My mate, who became my partner, got me a job on a Rolling Stones tour.
Right.
As part of the lighting crew. And that was a huge operation. And the trucking was pretty chronically disorganised.
Okay.
And my friend had already been to America with bands and said they do this much better in America.
So that's where the idea came from.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Rolling Stones one. Now, what sort of places did you go to in those days?
Europe,
all over Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
So you carted their kit from venue to venue.
Yeah.
Only one night stands, was it again, or did they do a couple of nights?
They tended to go to somewhere in Europe and rehearse and do a couple of shows, and mainly one night stands. Yeah, it was pretty heavy going.
Because this is 70s, so they were quite successful.
Early 70s.
So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Big band.
They were already a big band. Yeah.
So we're moving on from that. So you say the friend is that
Roy Lamb.
Roy Lamb. So Roy Lamb was one of the original mates of yours.
He now works direct for bands. Lots of different people, Page and Plant, and I mean he's become a full-blown production manager.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, he came back from the States and he said, hang on, they do it differently.
Yeah.
So did you, I mean, did you sit down and think, hang on, we can do this, or did it happen?
He went out and got himself a heavy goods vehicle licence.
Good start.
Yeah, good start. But the problem we ran up against was that we couldn't get the vehicles insured. I mean, music in them was considered, a tryst with the devil. I mean, it was sex and drugs and rock and roll. You could not get insurance. But I went to my dad's farm insurance broker and twisted his arm and say, look, we don't have to say it's the Rolling Stones. We could say it's some kind of agricultural event and we're taking lights to... So I was the one, my contribution in the very early days was
the insurance.
To arrange the insurance, which was pretty important, yeah.
So you basically leased or bought. How big was the truck?
We hired. Well, I first
had
had an old bread van, which I did before we set up the trucking company. I did David Bowie, the first tour. His album Ziggy Stardust came out I believe in '69. People may correct me because I'm old now and I've forgotten dates. But I believe the Ziggy Stardust came out in '69, but was a bit of what they call a sleeper. It didn't really happen until the early '70s, when I was on tour with an old bread van, taking his lights, transporting his lights.
So I bet you that record, if it didn't happen, Adrian Rondeau, who we've just had in, I bet that would have been a collector's album.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because if it didn't take off...
From '69. I may not have that quite right. If he's listening...
He'll know.
Can ring
but so you leased... You had a bread van.
Yeah.
So when did you form this idea of having this Edwin Shirley trucking? When did that happen?
Roy Lamb had worked for Santana in America, and when they organised the European tour, they contacted him, and he said, I'll arrange it for you. And that was when we had the panic with not having insurance, not having trucks, not having trailers.
But you had a bread van?
I had a bread van, but that wasn't big enough. They were already a big band then.
Yeah.
And so we had to scrabble around and get together. I think it was 3 Arctics on that tour.
3 Arctics?
Yeah.
And were they actually, signed up and, did you have your name on it? I mean, did people start to be aware?
I don't think so in the early days. I don't think so in the early days. The name was a choice between... His name was Roy Lamb and mine was Edwin Shirley, and Shirley Lamb sounded a bit camp. And so in the end, we did a deal with my dad on the farm where we used the collateral of the farm to borrow money to buy trucks. And I said to Roy, we'll call the Lamb Company Lamb, Sheep and Cows, and they'll call the trucking company Edwin Shirley Trucking. And he said, OK, it's a deal.
It's a deal. And they are. The farm came in useful in the end, Edwin, yes?
Yeah.
That's the link.
Yeah.
Let's listen to Santana. And you know which it is. It's Black Magic Woman. Edwin Shirley, my guest today in the studio from Essex, EST. I nearly said Essex, but I'll have some events for you a bit later on. Edwin Shirley Trucking Trucks. They're now badged as EST, aren't they? But
yellow and purple.
Yellow and purple. And in fact, just tell me, were the trucks, when you first liveried them, that colour?
Yes. Roy and I decided...
Why the colour?
Well, as
outrageous?
noticeable, as outrageous as possible, yeah.
And I suppose if you go back to 70s, purple and yellow,
Yeah, and the word trucking is a very American thing. I mean, everyone uses it now, but I think we were the
The first
company to call ourselves a trucking company.
Trucking company. Did you see his trucks around in those days? Did you go to events and spot these Edwin Shirley trucking trucks around? Well, if you did and you got a question, don't hesitate to give us a call at 01245 49 50 50. And I know there's a few, I'll tell you what there are out there. There are people who will be collectors of trucks. Not just Eddie Stobart trucks, but there's Edwin Shirley ones, aren't there?
There are little models.
That's right.
We did do models, yeah, a little while ago, but there are models.
And there's still, I did actually, just to check you out when you were coming on, I did nip into a website which I didn't realise was actually collectible models. And in fact, they're on there. They're not cheap anymore, are they? Absolutely amazing. So Santana was your first tour with EST, or Edwin Shirley Trucking, it was very much called in those days. Dare I ask, did that work? I mean, because it was brand new to you, wasn't it?
Yeah. But no, it was a big success, and Roy had done it in America, and
3
they were very happy. I'm pretty sure it was 3. Yeah.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that started the ball rolling, and then where were you based in those days? Because you've talked about using
the farm in Kent.
Based on the farm in Kent.
I'd say yes.
So. Dad and Mum had to put up with Arctics.
Yes, and the neighbours got a little bit fed up with big trucks coming down very narrow lanes. But that couldn't last forever, and we quite soon, I can't remember the timing, but we got a yard at Battersea by the river in Battersea, next to the power station.
Okay.
And we were there for quite a long time. That was a great yard, yeah.
Now, you also had, I suppose it was all a bit, if you think it was fairly, you said, quite exciting times for an era in pop music.
Oh, yeah.
And you were doing things like you had your own calendars, didn't you, with scantily clad ladies on them.
That was just a bit of a laugh, really. Yeah, a bit of a laugh.
And they were all pictured down the farm, I believe.
Some were down the farm, some were in Battersea. We did one at, I think it's when the Stones played... Nebworth in '76. We did a complete calendar at Nebworth, which was lots of fun.
So I can imagine, yeah. Now, okay, so Santana, some of the groups that you took round from that early days, what sort of groups were you taking round, and
well,
how did they find you?
Well,
was it just...
we said everyone from ABBA to Zappa, basically. That's another slogan that...
Everything from ABBA to Zappa. Well, that's not bad, but I think we should check out the travel and then find out where Edwin Shirley Truckee moved their different groups around and who they moved. I think they even moved ABBA, I think, at one time. We'll check out on that as well. We're talking about Edwin Shirley Trucking with Edwin Shirley here in the studio. Now, you said about the slogan. What was that slogan about? Groups? If you'd moved...
we moved everyone from ABBA to Zappa.
And you moved ABBA?
Yeah. And Zappa.
I mean, don't you think those people...
I've just done, as it happens, I've just done a tour with the son of Zappa. Zappa, his name is, oh God, Dweezil Zappa. But been on tour just now, and I did a little tour, keep my hand in.
Keep your hand in.
Bit of van
and
driving.
you're nudging him and saying, oh, did your dad?
Yeah, oh yeah. And there's one of the crews still left, one of the road crews still there.
So yes, of course, you had loads of roadies, did you?
Yes.
Well, they called roadies, big guys with...
We only employed truck drivers, but then on the stage building we employed a whole load of people, yeah.
Well, John from Harwich has given us a call. He's a lorry driver, and his dream was to drive an EST truck. However, when he was offered the job, his wife would not let him take it because she was worried about all the groupies and the rock and roll lifestyle.
Oh, dear.
Was it really that bad?
Oh, not that good.
Had its moments.
Had its moments, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
So you were doing European tours. Yeah. I mean, tell us, you must have had some quite interesting times with certain groups and carted huge amounts of stuff around, weren't you?
Yeah. Some of the anecdotes are not really repeatable.
No, I'm sure they're not.
On your radio show.
But what were some of the biggest tours you do in volume of kit, as an example? Because you got into stages, haven't you?
Yeah, we got into building stages. Again, through my partner, Roy Lamb. He did some work in America, and Fleetwood Mac came over to do some open-air shows and brought a stage. And so we got into staging, putting that up.
That is quite interesting. So they brought the stage.
Yeah, because there was nothing in England.
So how did you send it by sea?
Yeah, sea containers.
So you wait till it turns up in containers.
Yeah, well, no, it was booked in advance.
No, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then So what?
And then he knew how to put it together. So we had to then transport it. As a result of that, we got to know the staging company in America, and we started off as a kind of European department of that staging company.
So then were stages built in the UK?
And then we started making them ourselves and building them ourselves, yeah.
So you've mentioned the Rolling Stones there as one of the biggest, is that?
Well, once you start moving stages around, you see, you'd have 3 stages leapfrogging each other, and each stage would be 10 trucks.
So what's your biggest?
So 100 and something Arctics, Rolling Stones, Michael Jackson.
You did Michael Jackson?
Yeah, 100 and something trucks.
100 and something?
Yeah, but 10 would be a stage that would do every 3rd show. So whilst you're playing one show, you're building another one in the next place, you're tearing down the one before, and one is moving. So 3
So they're
stages.
all in different places. Yeah. They're not trundling up like a convoy up the road.
No, it's 30 or 40 stage trucks.
That's an amazing amount of kit, isn't it?
Yeah, and we got a bit silly, actually.
And were the Rolling Stones one of the... Well, you said Michael Jackson and the Rolling Stones were the 2 biggest.
Queen did some fabulous shows. Yeah.
Did you do most of Queen?
No, all of Queen.
Now, Queen went round the world in the end, didn't they? So what happens then?
We would go round the world with the staging element of it.
Because they went to Japan and all over, didn't they?
Yeah, South America. They broke South America for big rock bands.
So
I've just been with an old friend of mine, Jerry Stickles, who started with Jimi Hendrix, and he was production manager for Queen, and he persuaded them to go to South America, which was considered a bit of a dodgy place in the early 80s.
So I'm just imagining you sitting in your office, you guys, and someone ringing up and saying, well, we're thinking of going to South America, but we want the stage. We want you to get the stage there and sort of... Yeah. You must have thought... I mean,
it's a logistical nightmare.
Logistical nightmare. Insurance nightmare must have been, mustn't it?
Yeah. Well, I went back to my friendly old farm insurance broker
and said, we're moving this kit.
Yeah. But then there are now specialist companies. There's a very well-known specialist insurance broker in the music business now.
But that seems, mind-blowing. So how long would a tour, say, how long was the Queen tour in South America, as an example?
Well, it'd be in South America for maybe a couple of months, but a whole worldwide tour would be about a year.
So is it any of your people are actually with that tour all the time?
The staging crew.
So how many men is that you've carted off to?
Oh, goodness.
Is it about 10 or 20?
Yeah, 10 or so, yeah.
10 or so people.
And then you get local people
to participate.
To help.
But that is pretty impressive, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's a worldwide industry. Yeah.
So then we saw, really, if you look at how it's gone on, pop music has changed quite dramatically, because you were possibly there in the biggest times of tours.
Yeah. The big difference now is that the record companies are no longer as powerful as they used to be. They used to subsidise the tours. Now the tours
have got to make money.
Subsidise the record companies sometimes, yeah. No, they do make money. They do make a lot of money, tours. In the old days, they cost money. They now make money.
They now make money.
Lots.
Have you got a memory of Edwin Shirley trucking? If you have, and you'd like to talk to Edwin, 01245 49 50 50. I like John's story about it. You'd imagine him going home saying, I've got a job with the EST. The wife saying, no, you're not doing that. You're not doing that at all. Well, we'll find out about all that kit, which we were talking about, stages. If you imagine you've seen the Michael Jackson stages, you've seen the Rolling Stone stages, I'm sure lots of you, and all that kit, where did it go? We'll find out in just a little while. We talked about big tours with Edwin Shirley here. You talked about particularly Jackson and also Rolling Stones. Now, you said how much kit was going around. Now, the thing about the Rolling Stones tours is they would do a tour. They'd be pretty extravagant with their staging. I mean, I know I've been to a couple of their stage shows, and it's They change it each time. They're not going to use the same kit again, are they?
No.
So what do they do with all this kit?
Well,
I mean, what did they do in those early days?
They asked me to store it, and the only place I could find big enough to store that kind of stuff is Barnes in Kent. So
Right.
we had barns full of all kinds of stuff in Kent, blow up honky tonk women and all kinds of stuff, revolving stages.
So what long term? You know, what long term happened? Because surely, I know a revolving stage you might use again, but I mean a blow up honky tonk woman, you're not going to use again, are you?
Well, I think they eventually went back to the people who make them, a company in Suffolk, and they've got a kind of museum of blow up
toys. We better be careful what we say.
But the Stones now have they've got equipment all over the world from tours, and they've had a huge sort out, got rid of a lot of it, but they've brought the key stuff, the stuff they want to keep, is now in, I believe, being concentrated in 2 warehouses in West London somewhere.
Wasn't there a time also where Edwin Shirley Trucking looked at having a bus?
Yeah, we did.
Now tell us a bit about the bus.
Well, we had a crew bus.
All right, now go back to it. What made you think of that?
Well, again, in America, they
have crew
tour in buses, yeah, and now it's in Europe. It's a really common thing, but we had to be the first. We had a crew bus.
So, how did you go about finding someone that would manufacture a crew bus to your spec?
Well, that was very difficult in those days in England, and we ended up with the closest, which is a company near Newbury that made horse boxes.
Right.
But of course, a horse box isn't quite the same as a crew bus that you want to sleep in, and we had this wonderful bus which we had made, but it was known right from the start as the horse bus, I'm afraid, which was not the greatest.
So how many people would you take on this?
14 is still we set the
trend.
We set the trend, but they've been doing it in America for a long time because the distances are so much greater. There are loads of people touring buses now, and in Europe.
When did you actually end up leaving EST? Because you came out of the company, didn't you? What sort of time was that?
I got sidetracked or mid-90s. I set up a studio complex in East London where we did the first Big Brother and lots of other quite famous things. And I got completely into that. And so, I left the trucking company, but it's still going very strong indeed.
So what has, because you keep in touch with them, I'm sure.
Of course, yeah.
So what, it's, is it Roy Lamb and, was it Del Roll?
Del Roll's still there. Roy Lamb also left at the same time as me, and he's a production manager now for several different bands.
So Del Roll's
still there.
And how and what has changed? We've been talking about some quite... If you look back, Edwin, you're talking... I mean, I can see in your face, you're smiling, you're laughing. They were very exciting times for the whole industry, not just the trucking company. They were great for music, weren't they?
I don't know if it's become a bit more boring. There are loads of competitors. I mean, we were the only company at the start.
When did competitors start creeping in, do you think?
Well, the Who, there was a bit of a tax thing where if you bought trucks, they were allowable against tax. So the Who bought some trucks and set up a company called ML. But there are half a dozen companies now doing
the same job.
Some doing it well, some not so well. But it's easier now. There are no borders in Europe. European Union I used to spend half my time doing customs documents.
Which must be quite challenging when you're talking about a Stones tour with all that amount of kit.
And how to get it quickly through customs, and there are lots of ways of doing that.
Legal and illegal, I'm sure.
But
we won't go there.
Now it's much easier because all common market countries there's completely free movement.
How do you think the company has changed? Okay, you still see the trucks on the road. What else is it doing to actually? Because it must have expanded.
It's expanded. It's a big company now, and I'm sure it's got more efficient. And like I say, the tours are much more an industry. On the tours themselves, There are too many accountants now. I mean, it's a bit more difficult to have fun on these tours.
So
now.
the fun's been taken out?
The fun's to an extent. To an extent.
And they've got, what, is it about 25 tractors, 6 rigids,
it's
50
a big
trailers? That's massive.
Yeah.
Massive. 100 drivers. I mean, that's some sort of company, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's good.
Well, we'll be just chatting to Edwin in a little while to see where perhaps he's going in the future as well. Now, I'm talking to Edwin Shirley, and as I said, he was one of the founders of Edwin Shirley Trucking, but you've come out the company now. We've talked about the company with all its vastness and still doing a similar sort of work, as well as carting other things as well, isn't it? Is it cart other things as well as groups?
Yeah, exhibitions, all in the entertainment business.
It's still the entertainment business.
Yeah.
So, okay, finally then, Edwin, okay, you've left the heady world of rock and roll. What are you doing with yourself now?
Well, I've drifted back into transporting.
A young zapper, you gave.
Yeah, I did a young zapper. That was a call from someone from the old days. But I still get calls to transport unusual things. Theatre companies, dance companies, works of art.
So where do you move a work of art as an example?
Well, I've just been to Sicily 3 times for an artist who lives down there, who's moving back, did several works of art down there and is moving back to London.
That's quite specialist, isn't it?
Yeah, and dealing with the artists. I mean, if you've dealt with Frank Zappa and artists in the music business, you can deal with artists in other fields.
So, does anybody ever say to you, "Are you going to retire? Can you imagine you retire?"
No, I can't retire.
You wouldn't know what to do, would you?
I wouldn't know what to do at all.
So it's intriguing that you've gone nearly a full circle, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm back with small vehicles, moving odd things for people. But I do stuff for the Royal Opera House. I do mainstream stuff, but in a smallish way, in specialist.
In a bread van?
Bit better. I've got a bit better vehicles.
Than a bread van?
I've got a bit better vehicles.
But you're not going to go back to Arctics?
No.
You're going to stay where you are?
That's right, yeah.
Well, Edwin, I've had a fascinating time. I hope people at home can, remember those purple and yellow trucks, and you must have had an intriguing early life in those rock and roll years. Fun. What was it? Sex
and drugs and rock and roll. And fun. Lots of fun.
Lots of fun.
Lots of fun, yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Edwin.
Thank you.
And you can look up, there is a website on Edwin Shirley Trucking if you're a bit of a fanatic as well. And
we roll.
What's that one?
Well, our slogan was "You rock, we roll," and I believe the website is "You rock, we roll."
There you are. Final word from Edwin Shirley.